Hi, this is Tanya Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. If you haven't already, please subscribe to PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any content there either. Today, I'm joined by Eric Hahn, the Director of Sales and Marketing at brite. brite is a leading manufacturer of cleaning and care products, as well as engine maintenance products for boats, as well as automotive and RVs. Their fuel management products are also used in engines like lawnmowers, four-wheelers, snowmobiles, things of that nature. Today we're going to talk about the science behind marine fuel management. In short, how to maintain fuel in your boat during the season when you're actively using your boat, and how to safely store your boat from a fuel management perspective when it's not in active use. The reality is what you need to do to manage your boat's fuel during the different seasons is quite easy and inexpensive. But I wanted to dive deeper a bit into the science behind fuel management so that we can better understand why we need to take the steps that we need to take. Thanks so much for being here today, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it'll be a fun chat. I always like talking to you guys. So, before we start talking about fuel management, I just wanted to give folks, a bit of an overview of brite. You manufacture and bottle pretty exclusively in the U.S., don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our manufacturing facility up in Montgomery, Alabama, and we're corporately located here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But everything we do, we blow mold in-house. We make all our own bottles, do all our own blending and filling. So it makes us kind of unique in that space. A lot of other packagers who blend products don't necessarily blow their own bottles or package here in the U.S. So it gives us a unique advantage to kind of make our own products, and we're not really beholden to a lot of supply chain challenges, which of course these days is important.
That was what I was so impressed. I mean, I got to know brite better in the heart of the pandemic.
Sure.
And when supply chain was the first question on everybody's mind,
yep, absolutely.
And when I learned how you operated down there, it was quite impressive, really.
Yeah, it gives us all that flexibility. We actually sell bottles to a lot of other companies, so it worked out well for us during the supply chain challenges of COVID.
Absolutely. Good. All right, so let's dive a bit into fuel management. Can you first talk about overall kind of fuel management considerations during the season, when a boat's being used,
Sure. Yeah. So fuel management today is something, people used to think about seasonal fuel storage years ago, putting things away for winter or storing your winter equipment for, spring, putting it away for springtime. Today, it's grown a lot since the advent of ethanol blended fuels, especially, has added a new wrinkle to it. You really have to talk about fuel stability year round. And just outside, I know a lot of the customers listening to this are marine related, but a lot of them also probably have classic cars, and they certainly have lawnmowers and weed whackers and ATVs and maybe some RVs and generators and all those other toys that we utilize. So I'll talk a little bit more broadly about all that stuff as well, too. But certainly for the marine aspect, with ethanol fuel, anything, piece of equipment that you don't use your fuel fully up within 30 days, whether it's your car, your boat, your lawnmower, you want to make sure that you're treating it these days. And that's really at the heart and the core of why fuel management is so important these days, is that the fuel that we have today just does not last like it used to, 12, 15 years ago when we had MTBE fuel.
Mm-hmm. So you would define long-term storage as 30 days or more. Right?
Yeah, basically, 30 to 45 days, depending where you're at in the country, is when you really want to start thinking about stabilizing your fuel. And unfortunately, in the boating world, 2 rainy weekends and a kid's birthday, and you haven't used your boat in 30 days, and it sneaks up on you pretty quick. And that's where we really like to encourage the year-round fuel stability and fuel performance with our Tron branded product. That one really is meant to be used year-round.
Okay, good. So can you just talk a bit about how Tron, it's an enzyme fuel treatment, right? I mean,
correct.
The power of enzymes.
Yep.
Can you, and I know it's been hugely successful in the market, can you explain a bit about how the product works and some of the differences?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, Startron is an enzyme-based product. It is the only fuel additive on the market today that is enzyme-based, which really makes it very unique. Unlike a traditional chemical stabilizer where you have X amount of fuel, you need X amount of product to stabilize it. It's a chemical reaction. The problem is with ethanol fuel is that it is a lighter weight fuel, so it evaporates much faster. It also is what we call hygroscopic. It's thirsty all the time, so it wants to absorb moisture. The enzymes present a unique way to address those two issues, in that they basically are proteins that start chemical chain reactions. And much like you used to use hot water and a big scoop of laundry detergent, when you're doing your laundry, today we use cold water and a little spoonful of juice. Basically the same thing when it comes to fuel management. We just designed enzymes that live in a petroleum environment, and those enzymes basically, not that they're living, but they continually react. So they go from one job to the next job to the next job, and as that fuel sits there and gets older and older, and as it evaporates more and more and more gums and varnishes form, those enzymes continually react and continually break them down. And as that new water comes into the system, it continually breaks down that water into smaller and smaller droplets, basically relieving the surface tension. Surface tension, so that the water doesn't have enough power to hook onto that ethanol molecule and that water molecule and pull it out of suspension, which is where you hear that term phase separation that is so prevalent with ethanol fuels today. So it gives it that big advantage over traditional chemicals where, okay, I treated it last Thursday and I did my, 1-to-1, ratio, but now it's a week later and more evaporation has taken place. So there's more gums and varnishes. There's also more water. You would technically need to go back and redose with that traditional chemical. Whereas with Startron, you did it when you filled up your tank and you're good to go until you use it and have to refuel it basically.
That's interesting. Obviously a lot of people have heard of enzymes, right? We have enzymes in our bodies. I mean, enzymes are nature's catalysts, right? I mean, they cause chemical reactions
chain
or
reactions
reactions in our body or chemistry or what have you. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's just again a new way to treat fuel that really worked out well. Luckily for us, and the consumers have really responded. It's become the number one selling ethanol blended fuel treatment. So it does very, very well for all the customers that use it out there, and very cost effectively as well.
Good, awesome. So we of course have the issue of having to manage the ethanol and the fuel that most people use.
Sure.
But there's also fuel economy and emission reduction and, keeping your carburetors cleaned and so forth, which is all kind of related. Mm-hmm. How does start trying to address those issues?
Yeah. So again, it is not just all about stability these days. There are all the other whole host of issues that go back in time of fuel, right? Octane, water in the fuel, performance, emissions reduction, carbon buildup, all of those different issues that affect fuel. Startron really does. It is a complete fuel system treatment. That is one of the other unique benefits of it. There's not just one enzyme in there. There's actually a blend of about 26 different enzymes. So they do a lot of different things. So as you come to emission reduction, especially with ethanol fuel, it's important to note Startron works in non-ethanol fuels as well too, especially rec fuels for our boaters out there, which are good fuels. They're certainly have a longer shelf life than ethanol fuels, but they're still not as long as what MTBE fuel was. So I'll speak with them kind of in the same tone. They don't burn as cleanly, especially when you're idling, so they lead to more carbon buildup. The Startron enzymes, the real secret to how they work is they don't like any impurities, and they basically like smaller and smaller components. So they take that large ethanol molecule or fuel molecule and basically break it up into smaller and smaller pieces. As you burn the fuel, you run it through your carburetor or through your injectors. It comes out as a finer mist, so you get a better blend of oxygen and fuel to start off with. So you're getting a more complete burn, which in its own right reduces your emissions because you're burning your fuel more completely. So it really helps from that aspect. It also cuts down on the carbon buildup on the top end of your engine by the same aspect of that it's burning more of your fuel. Plus the enzymes also break down, and the solvent, the carrier base for the product itself actually helps break down that carbon buildup on the top end of the engine. So again, it has performance benefits. You're certainly going to see a fuel mileage increase if you're using it in your vehicles, of about 0.3% per mile. So it's impactful. But on a boat, what does that equate to? Because we don't really worry about MPG as much. Um, but it's, faster time to plane, more miles. You're going to go further on that tank of gas, so you're filling up less on the water. You can carry your tubers longer and further. When you're towing, you can carry more gear on your boat, more effectively and more efficiently. And of course, with dock fuel prices, that is all very, very important these days. So yeah, Startron not only stabilizes, but it is that year-round full performance additive as well.
That makes tons of sense. I think, we're, many people out there, they're not always necessarily fully knowledgeable about how to manage ethanol fuel, but we're getting there. That's the point of this session. But I was not aware that rec fuel is different than the fuels of previous decades. How is rec fuel different than what we used to use?
Yeah, so basically the package that changed from MTB to ethanol fuels and rec fuels was the oxygenate package and the ingredients that were used to make those. And on ethanol fuel, the ethanol was used to replace a lot of that octane in those fuels. Recreational fuels or rec fuels, non-ethanol fuels, use a different chemistry in them than what MTBE used. It's a much greener fuel. It's a much more environmentally friendly fuel, but at the same time, it also evaporates faster. It's what they call lighter weight fuel. So the lighter ends of the of the hydrocarbon molecules end up evaporating faster, which in themselves leads to more gum and varnish. With recreational fuels, you don't get as much of the water absorption that you do with the ethanol, which is the main thing that a lot of people in the marine environment are certainly worried about. But you still get a lot of gum and varnish buildup. So although you've taken away half the equation of the issues, but you still have other issues, and so it becomes important to remember that you still need to treat the recreational fuels as well.
Good. Well, that's interesting. This is why I love my job. I learn something new every single day.
Yeah, it's a never evolving process, right? We got away from ethanol fuels at marinas. We said, oh, cool, it's great. And then we figured out, a year later, we're still having some issues with stability. So yeah, it's been an evolving process over many, many years. And, to try and keep the boaters out there and keep their engines running and keep them on the water having fun is that's really what we're all about at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's turn to long-term storage now. Which we're defining as 30 days, 45 days, as we discussed, or more. What is we already established the storage period, but what do people need to think about as they're going to put their boats away for the season, or even just for a month period of time, or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, as it's getting colder out, we're looking towards winterization, especially if you're in the northern parts of the country. And Startron has always been our traditional stabilizer, and it will stabilize fuel up to 2 years. And it does a phenomenal job at that. But what a lot of people in the marketplace certainly kept asking for was also corrosion protection. And traditional Startron did not have any additional corrosion protection. And it's always been our stance that it wasn't necessary because every gallon of pump grade gasoline has a ton of corrosion inhibitors already pumped into it from the refineries and the fuel companies, because all of their lines are untreated steel, so they can't afford to have any corrosion. But certainly in the marine environment, there's injector tips, there's metal tanks, older aluminum tanks, other injector tip components and fuel system components, especially in older engines that could benefit from some additional corrosion protection. And so where we've used Startron for the last, almost 18 years, very effectively at winterization, for those customers that do have those concerns, and especially if they have, lawn equipment with untreated steel tanks, things like Harley Davidsons and a lot of other motorcycles use untreated steel tanks. That's where we came out with a brand new product that we're releasing just for this season called Stabilizer Plus. So it is the newest generation of Startron. So it's everything that you know and love about our current Startron enzyme-based product, plus the addition of additional corrosion inhibitors in there. So if you're putting your boat away for longer term storage for winterization or your lawnmowers or your Harley, it does a really great job. If you do have those additional corrosion concerns, it gives you the benefit of both worlds, of a little bit of that traditional stabilization from the the corrosion inhibitors plus the enzymes to do all the work that we talked about that they already do. So it really is the marriage of the two best technologies out there.
Exactly. Good. And we've sort of, we've discussed this really, but can you just succinctly, tell listeners what happens if fuel isn't stored properly? If it's not properly treated?
Sure. Yeah. Some of the issues that you're going to run into certainly are you go to start the boat up in the springtime and it doesn't turn over. Or if it does, it runs very rough. You might get a lot of coughing and spitting, a lot of extra smoke coming out. The worst case scenario, if you're using ethanol blended fuels, is that your fuel phase separates. And basically what that is, if you think of the analogy I like to use is Italian salad dressing, right? So you buy it, you shake it up, you put it in your refrigerator, you come back an hour later and it's all separated out into the different layers. Basically, ethanol fuel will do the same exact thing if you let it sit long enough. And what ends up happening is again, that fuel is thirsty. It's bringing in more water. So it pulls in enough water and the water actually attaches to the ethanol. And the ethanol and the fuel itself, they mix well like the Italian salad dressing, but they don't physically bond. What happens is that water comes into the system. That does physically bond with the ethanol. It becomes heavy and it falls to the bottom of the tank. Once that happens, there's no saving it. You cannot repair, separated fuel when it comes to that aspect. You can help prevent it. You can mitigate it from occurring. You can manage the amount of water in your fuel system, which is what things like Tron do. But if you get it phase separated, your fuel pickups for your engines, they use a straw. They go to the bottom of the tank. So what's down there, if it separates, is alcohol and water. You suck that into your engine. Those are not good combinations. It may start, which is probably one of the worst case scenarios, because then you're pulling in water directly into your combustion chamber, and then you can hydrolock your engine, or even worse, blow head gaskets or bend your valves, or really do some serious damage to your engine. So it's not a good scenario. If you're just pulling in a little bit of phase separated fuel, you're getting extra alcohol, which is going to burn hotter and faster, and you can end up with hot spots or burn a hole in the engine, or blow a rod or something too. So there's a whole host of bad things that can end up occurring. Plus the other bad thing is that then you're left with all that unstabilized, not oxygenated fuel up top that's going to varnish up and gum up really fast. So you're going to end up with a big mess inside your fuel tank. So there's a host of other products that we offer. If you do have an older tank that's had some issues, like our tank cleaners and stuff, to help kind of clean up some of those issues. But those are things that you really want to try and avoid. Not just, I've got some stale fuel and I got to pump it out. It gets a lot deeper than that, into engine issues, replacing fuel lines and hoses and injectors and fuel tanks, and just the laundry list of nightmare items goes on. And then before you know it, you were hoping to have a good springtime and use your boat, and then you're 6 weeks in or 8 weeks into a mechanic job, and then having to replace more than you thought about just cleaning up your fuel. So it really pays in the long run to put a little bit of that insurance in your tank for storing it.
Yeah, I was aware of your tank cleaner product, and you also have a product called Quick Fix. I mean,
yes.
Star Brite products are effective. But how, how effective are these products at reverse? how bad can a problem be? You know what I mean? Sure. Sometimes when things are so far gone, no product in the world is going to fix it, right?
Basically, yeah. So yeah, if you run into that phase separation issue, that's when it's too far gone. And unfortunately, nothing's going to help you. We'd love to tell you that there's a magic cure, but there's not. No. We do make a couple of products that are more cleaning gauged products, such as our tank cleaner, that's going to remove all the gums and varnishes and quickly strip those out of the fuel system. We also have our Ring Clean and our Quick Fix products, which are basically very heavy PEA additives. So think of brand name would be like Tron. It's a quick cleaner. So it quickly strips out gums, varnishes, carbon. So it'll give your system a good shock and clean it out. So if you have a rough running, hard starting engine, maybe you used a traditional stabilizer and you ended up with a lot of extra gums and varnish and carbon buildup, and you want to clean that out really quick in the spring, you could use our Quick Fix or our Ring Clean type products to quickly remove all those gums and varnishes from the system. So yeah, we do have some fix-it type items as well as the preventative items on the Tron side.
Good. Well, this is great. The thing I love about, boating and most things with an engine are expensive, but there's fuel management is not expensive. So it's the one
it's certainly
thing,
not.
you know.
Yeah, with
Not a lot of
Tron,
money.
I think, yeah, our average, cost per treatment ratio, if you go with one of our concentrate bottles, I mean, you're looking anywhere from 5 to 6 cents a gallon to make sure that your fuel is treated, which in the grand scheme of things and the cost of fuel today is very, very minimal. To ensure that your boat starts up every spring and every time you want to get on the water and not have any headaches, between tow services or just having to call a mechanic out to get the boat started. It'll save you a lot of time and money in the long run.
The cheapest part of boating right here.
Exactly.
So, and
it could be very well.
And arguably the easiest. Store it in there.
Just pour it in the tank. That's all you have to do.
Well, good. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Eric. This was, it was a great conversation. I think the insights and information you share is going to be really interesting to people.
Yeah, again, thanks so much for having us. And if anybody wants to learn more about ethanol or how StarTron works, we can certainly go more in depth on that kind of stuff. You can visit us on our website, startron.com, or call us up here at Starbrite, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Absolutely. And we're, here at PartsVu, we're proud to carry really the full catalog of Starbrite products, and encourage people to check them out at partsvu.com, as well as certainly, as Eric said, visit the Starbrite website, and they have a lot of great videos and information there as well. So I have included links to all your social channels and your website in the show notes. So I encourage people to go check that out.
Thank you. Yeah, PartsVu is an excellent partner of ours, and we look forward to doing more of these pieces with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Are you in a dock war with your boating neighbor for the cleanest boat? Check out our marine soaps, polishes, waxes, and more at partsvu.com. And for free shipping, use the coupon code PVTalksShine, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned, more information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Xchange. And a big thanks to Mind for performing the original music featured within this podcast.